I've lived in Texas for 10 years now. I'm actually originally from Delaware and Pennsylvania. I'm a transplant down here. I've been a spider enthusiast for I guess the last 5 years. I've always loved them though. I remember being young and kind of watching orb weavers make their webs under the lights out on our deck at night and catch moths. Now, typically, I'll do outreach and education here in North Texas by doing some walk and talks where we'll actually go to like parks like Southwest Nature Preserve or Leela, and I'll actually just point out spiders and show people. So this is actually my first Zoom presentation on spiders, so I'm pretty excited about that. Now, I am not an arachnologist. I am an enthusiast. I know a little bit, but I definitely don't know anything. So if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat and we can answer those at the end. If I don't know, I will definitely try to find out though. My day job actually is I'm a data analyst and I'm also a student at UT Arlington. So my spare time is for spiders, but everything else is, I have a day job, unfortunately. So let's get right into it. And I'll kind of go into the goals of this talk and kind of what I want everybody to get out of this, hopefully. So if you guys want to take a read of that little quote on the left here, it's by a poet, Rudy Francisco. She asked me to kill the spider. Instead, I get the most peaceful weapons I can find. I take a cup and a napkin, I catch the spider, put it outside, and allow it to walk away. If I am ever caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, just being alive and not bothering anyone, I hope I am greeted with the same kind of mercy. So spiders are not very much appreciated. So one of my goals is to hopefully bring some appreciation to them. They're often very misunderstood animals. I also want to show off how diverse and awesome they are. They're very colorful and interesting looking up close. Hopefully I can convert some of you from being spider killers to maybe either being indifferent or even maybe spider lovers. That would be awesome. And I also just want to kind of give an idea of what spiders you guys may come across as you're walking around NPAT properties, Blackland prairies, or just kind of in the North Texas area in general. And just for fun, if you choose not to find joy in spiders, you will have less joy in your life, but still the same amount of spiders. So hopefully this will also help some people maybe approach them differently, maybe not be as afraid of them. They're not as scary as they're made out to be. So arachnids. First, I'm going to start to talk generally just about arachnids, give kind of a little intro to class Arachnida. So all spiders are arachnids, but not all arachnids are spiders. The picture here is of a crab spider, one of the flower crab spiders, and she's actually sitting on some liatris at Mary Talbot Prairie. There are about 12 orders in class Arachnida, and we're going to kind of just go through some of those slightly quickly to get to the meat of it. Before delving into that, I do want to show some very, very basic spider anatomy. So I have some pictures here, and we'll kind of go through these kind of quickly. But this is a wolf spider. This is a male wolf spider. I actually found him down in Brownsville, and he was very pretty to me. Not everyone likes them. But item number one there is pointing to the pedipalps. So there are two different appendages that are used for feeling and sensory in the females and actually for reproduction in the males. Two is referring to the cephalothorax. Spiders, Araneomorphae spiders specifically, have two body segments. So you have the cephalothorax, which is number two, and number three is the abdomen. Number four is pointing to the very end of the abdomen there, where you're typically going to find the spinnerets, and that's where the silk comes out of. You can also see they have typically 8 legs. Even if a spider is missing 2 legs and they only have 6, does not make it an insect. They're still spiders. And then the next one here is a cute little jumping spider. It's a Phidippus audax, or a bull jumper. They're very common across Texas. Number one is pointing to the chelicerae. And with this specific species, and actually a lot of the genera, these are typically very brightly colored, a lot of times in the males. Iridescent, I think it's really pretty looking. Number two is actually pointing to the fang that actually comes out of those. So they'll have 2 fangs that are grasping. And then 3 again is pointing to the pedipalp again, just so you can see that. So just a very brief look at arachnid taxonomy and kind of how it's laid out. There's about 11 orders of arachnids. So acari are your mites and ticks. You have your tailless whip scorpions and a bunch of other ones. The ones I've highlighted in blue is the ones that we're going to briefly go over before we get to the meat of the presentation, which are araneomorph spiders. So you guys might have seen these around. These are harvestmen or opilions. So the common name for these are actually daddy longlegs. You guys might have heard of those. There are tons of myths around these guys. I've heard some crazy stuff. I think one of the myths I've heard is that they are actually the most venomous spider in the world, but their fangs are too small to penetrate human skin. There's a lot wrong with that. The first thing is they're not spiders. The second part is they actually don't have any venom at all. These guys are actually scavengers. They'll go around and eat like insect eggs, small insects, and dead material, whether it's made by plant or animal. So they're pretty cool. They're harmless, completely harmless. Here's actually a close-up of one munching on a dead moth it found along the sidewalk. So again, comparing it to a spider, it has a single fused body segment, so it doesn't have like the head and the abdomen. It's just kind of all one piece there. The next one, and this is kind of one of my favorites, and these definitely look prehistoric. These are Thelophanida, or a common name for these are vinegaroons. Now, that name comes from basically the smell of the acidic acid liquid that they shoot from their rear when they're threatened. We actually found this one in Madden Prairie back in August doing some mothing. I did interact with this one. I did not pick her up because she was actually pushing 4 inches. She was one of the largest ones I've ever seen. Now, the reason I didn't really want to pick her up is because she did shoot that acetic acid liquid at me, and they have pretty good aim. Luckily, I had a little container that I blocked it with. But to give you an example of how strong that is, white vinegar, like your typical vinegar you have at home, is 5% acetic acid. Their solution is 85%. So you don't really want to get that in your eyes. And I got some on my hands and it smelled for quite a while. Not pleasant. I'm going to actually see if I can't pull up a video real quick for you guys. So let me pause this and switch over one sec. And let's hope this works. If not, we might skip the videos. Okay. And this is a video of the vinegaroon at Madden Prairie. And I just kind of wanted to show you guys how it moves about and the different appendages. So I am going to resume sharing. If you guys can see that, feel free to unmute and let me know, but hopefully you guys can see this.
Yes.
Perfect, awesome. So what she's doing is these are actually modified pedipalps. So those little appendages you saw in the spiders, that's what those modified to become. And then she has these long legs that she's actually using to feel around. They're kind of like sensory legs. So they're definitely different than our typical spiders that we see. So this is when we released her after everybody got some pictures. She is still very angry, pointing her butt at me, definitely wanting to spray me again. That's why she's kind of raising up like that. So that was really cool to find out at Madden Prairie. Okay, let me get back over to the presentation real quick. Okie dokie. So yeah, they're really cool arachnids. I've actually never seen them until we went out to Madden last year. So another one are ticks and mites. We hate ticks. I mean, I don't like them. I'm not fond of them. I hate it when I find them on me. I went walking in a park in Delaware once and I had probably 30 or 40 on me. So it's not fun. But not only do they bother humans and mammals, they actually, mites and ticks will predate or either parasitize or phoretic. They have a phoretic relationship sometimes also, which means they'll actually attach themselves to another animal to travel. So this beetle, he's not dead, he's playing dead. He did not like me taking pictures of him, so he rolled over and kind of acted like he wasn't alive. But on the bottom, what I noticed when he did that is all these little tiny mites. And again, they're catching a ride on this beetle. I don't think they're actually parasitizing it. So that's pretty cool. Another one that you'll see pretty commonly are striped bark scorpions. These are not considered medically significant, though you don't want to really get stung by them because it hurts. At least I've heard it hurts. I've not yet been stung by one, thankfully. Here we have kind of a close-up of their stinger that's on the back end of them. And I think that's actually some venom dripping off. One of my favorite stories that I tell people is I had a friend while I was out mothing one night at Cedar Ridge Preserve, I think, or one of those. And he got everyone around and said, hey guys, look, I know how to pick up scorpions. Let me show you. So he kneeled down and we're all watching, like enthralled, like, yeah, cool, teach us how to pick up scorpions. And he proceeded to grab it by the tail and immediately was stung. So he was fine. He was totally fine. It was actually kind of funny. I think his pride was hurt more than anything else. So I don't pick them up. If they walk on me, they walk on me, but I don't pick them up. The other really cool thing about the scorpions is they'll actually fluoresce under UV light. So that's one of the easiest way to find those at night is they carry around like a little UV flashlight. On our last spider walk at Southwest Nature Preserve that I did, we had some UV flashlights and everyone was having a lot of fun just kind of shining them and then getting really excited when you finally see them glowing in the dark. So it's really cool. So scorpions are awesome. Then we have pseudoscorpions. Now, this is kind of a blurry image because these guys are only 2 to 8 millimeters in length. This one specifically was found at Louisville Lake. This is actually taken on a concrete picnic table. So you're seeing the tiny, tiny granules of like little pebbles. These guys do not have any venom. They actually prey on larvae, book lice, ants, mites, very little things like that. And the first one I ever found in Texas was actually by accident. I was over at LELA, or Louisville Lake Environmental Learning Area. I was obviously looking for spiders because that's what I do. And I found this really cool orb web, spider web. I found a fly in it and I was like, oh, he got eaten. Took a picture, got home to go through the photos and I noticed something in there. And that's actually a little tiny pseudoscorpion hanging onto that fly. So he definitely caught the wrong ride that day. So the next one are solifuges. So these are commonly called either camel spiders or wind scorpions, but again, they are not spiders and they are not scorpions. They also have modified pedipalps. It's actually those long legs reaching out. They're kind of sticky at the end. So when they actually hunt, they grab the prey, they bring it close to them, and they have 4 jaws, upper and lower. You can kind of see how pointy these are, and they just kind of shred it apart and eat it. Really fun to watch, for me at least. This one we actually found again at Prairie, which was really cool. And I have another video for you guys so we can actually watch them and how they move around. It's kind of fun to watch. Let me get that video over here again. Give me 1 sec. Go. Are you guys able to see this? Hopefully.
Yep. Yes.
Awesome. So what she's doing is she's actually clearing dirt and rocks out of what is going to be her den. So this again was out west in Madden Prairie. She needs to burrow. That's kind of what they do. So we got to actually watch her do this for a while. It was pretty cool. But again, she's moving the pedipalps. Those actually look like big, long legs. So it actually looks like they have 10 legs, but it's actually just modified pedipalps in the front. But you can also see here how the 2 jaws are all 4 jaws are independent of each other. So lots of movement going on. Bump back over again. And then finally, we have spiders. So the focus of the rest of the presentation is going to be on Araneomorphae spiders, but I do want to talk about tarantulas and trapdoor spiders a little bit because basically there's a split. You have your Araneomorphae spiders, which are like your orb weavers and your wolf spiders and pretty much all those other small ones. And then you have your older ones, which are your Megalomorphae. Those are your tarantulas and your trapdoor spiders. This was a nice big Aphanopelma species, or one of the Texas tarantulas, found out in Colorado City near Madden. She was gorgeous. This is a photo by Carly. It's me versus the tarantula. So this is kind of how I'm taking photos of them. Now, she got annoyed after a while and she did not want me to take pictures any longer. So she did this. If you see a tarantula do this, don't try to pick it up or touch it. That's a warning. If you can see there where it's red, that's where her fangs are. And she's literally very specifically warning me, get away from me, I will bite you if you keep bothering me. So I left her alone. Then she went back in her hole. So next, we're going to talk about a little bit of ecology and natural history of spiders. And that's also going to just be sprinkled in through the presentation itself. There's over 1,000 species of spiders that have been documented in journal articles in Texas. I think iNaturalist right now is up to about 460 species observed, which is really cool. So we're going to focus again specifically on Araneomorphe spiders, or the smaller ones. So not really much on tarantulas. I actually don't know as much about those. I'm still learning. But as we're getting into it, I want to talk a little bit about identifying spiders and some methods there. Spider eye arrangements are actually a big way that I learned how to identify families of spiders. So, and by family, I mean you have your orb weavers, you have your wolf spiders, you have your jumping spiders. Those are families. So some spiders will have 8 eyes, 6 eyes, and some even don't have any eyes. There's actually some spiders that will live in caves, and they've been there so long they've evolved to not even need eyes. So another big thing is it is not always possible to ID spiders to species. There are some families that are just hyper diverse, and there's hybridization going on, and also they're just not always that well studied. So what arachnologists will do is they'll actually dissect the spiders, and by that what I mean is they'll actually look at the sexual reproductive organs. In the females, that's the epigynem, which is along the bottom part of the abdomen, and in the males, that's the pedipalps. It's actually on the front of their face, like we looked at earlier. They'll use those with microscopes to determine what the species they are, because those sexual reproductive structures are actually distinct for different species of spiders. But what helped me was eye arrangements. So if you look at these, they look kind of goofy, and I love it. But like number 2, that's a salticid. They have the 2 big eyes, then 2 little smaller eyes, and then they even have eyes in the back of their head. They actually have 8 eyes total. And then if we go to number 11, that's actually a long-jawed orb weaver. They get that name because they have very long chelicerae like that. And then I think another one of my favorites is probably number 21. That's the Dinopody, or the net casting spiders. We're not really supposed to have those in Texas, but we do down south. I need to look a little bit more into that and see if they were transplanted here or what happened. But they actually will make a little web and wait for something to come up to them and then literally cast the net over their prey. It's really cool. So another thing that commonly happens is everything brown, any brown spider is a brown recluse. It is not true. I will show you guys later on how to kind of identify brown recluses and why they're also very misunderstood. So let's talk about sexing spiders, or males and females, and how to compare and kind of tell a male spider from a female spider. So on the left, we actually have a female Argioperantia. Again, this is a very, very common species of spider across Texas, but especially in prairies. These are actually in Matthews Prairie, and if you ever go out there around like June, July, and August, it is booming with these spiders. This is actually the first location I was able to find males, females, and juveniles like all at one time. It was really cool. So just looking at these, the female on the left, she has a much bigger abdomen than the male. She has to create eggs and hold eggs. The males are also, this doesn't give a good example, but the scale. So that male's body, like just pretend he doesn't have legs for a minute, that body is actually maybe just the size and length of her head, so of her cephalothorax. So they're much tinier. So there is sexual dimorphism in spiders. It's not only just the size difference sometimes, but coloration differences. It's kind of similar to birds. So there are small jumping spiders. You guys may have seen like the peacock spiders over in Australia. Well, we have something similar called Hibernatus here, where the males are very brightly colored, and they'll actually display and dance for the females. And the females are actually typically kind of neutral or dull or tan in color. So pretty cool. This is a more close-up of the bottom of the male. So they still have the spinnerets in the bottom, but something to point out here is that those pedipalps. So the male's pedipalps, when they're mature and sexually mature, they kind of look almost like boxing gloves from far away. You can see that they're large, but again, they're specific to species. And then this is a female. We're going to see the underside of her as well. and kind of zoom in there, and that's the epigynem. So that's where they would mate. Another cool thing about this photo though is a little bit above, and let me see if I can actually use this laser pointer thing. Right here on these two sides, that's actually the book lungs. That's actually the organ that spiders use for oxygen exchange. And they're called book lungs because they basically have a lot of slats or pages for surface area for oxygen exchange. And then the other cool thing about this photo is actually that you can see her spinnerets pretty well down there. So again, they're almost like spigots where the silk proteins would come out of. These are also found in Matthews Prairie. So with that, there's egg sacs. That's how spiders reproduce. They'll actually lay egg sacs. And it's really species dependent on how many like actual babies are in these. There's probably a lot for these, like hundreds, I'm assuming. And they're actually very distinct. So sometimes you can actually tell species of spiders apart by their egg sacs and what they look like. So this is Archaeobarantia egg sacs. They typically look like this. They're brown. These were actually probably this big because they were some of the biggest ones I've ever seen. So those egg sacs were huge. And then here's another example of some egg sacs that you guys might see. So if you ever see like a strand of little balls, you guys might have seen this going through some wooded areas on the side of like prairies and stuff. These are actually Basilica orb weaver egg sacs. So they're also very unique and pretty easy to spot. Now, another myth is that, spiders, they just exist, they kill, they're killing machines. There's actually maternal care in a lot of spiders. So this is a wolf spider or family Lycosidae. She is a mother, and this is her egg sac. So wolf spiders will actually carry their egg sac around with their spinnerets and protect it until the babies hatch. What I didn't notice until I actually put this slide presentation together is one of the babies is actually coming out and starting to hatch already. You can actually see the legs right above her abdomen, which I thought was pretty cool. But it's not done when they hatch. So what you might have seen many times is you'll have a wolf spider with weird looking abdomen, like something's going on, and it's actually like all her babies. So the babies will actually, the spiderlings will sit on the abdomen until they're old enough to hunt on their own. And here's some like detail of them. Now, sometimes if they're threatened or hit or squashed, unfortunately, the babies will try to scatter and run. I have seen moms come back for them if they're still alive to try to pick them back up. So that does happen. But I think they're really cute. But some people definitely get skeeved out by these. The other common misconception, which is not always a misconception, is that females will always eat males after mating. So that's not always true. Sometimes they definitely will because they get hungry. It happens. But you'll have spiders like this dictynids or these mesh web weavers. These are super tiny. They're maybe like a centimeter or so. But you actually have male and females that are going to live together. And the cool thing about these is a lot of them are plant specific. So if you look in the prairie and you look at the tips of like a lot of different grasses, you'll see little webs. And if you look really close, you'll see the dictynids, the little tiny spiders living in them. Well, some of them will be on grass tips, some of them will be on cedars, some of them will be on oak leaves. It just really depends on the species. Here's another close-up image of those to show the dimorphism of the sexes. So the top one's a female. She has that more robust, big abdomen. You can actually see her pedipalps a little bit. They're very small compared to the males, who again looks like punching bags down there. And then in order for spiders to actually grow and age and mature, they molt. So they actually shed their exoskeletons, and that's how they grow. So you can't always really tell what kind of spider came out of an exoskeleton, but sometimes there's actually leftover patterns or eye arrangements that might help you understand a little more. So like this one, if you see those two stripes going down and back behind the eyes, that's a rabidosa. That tells me this is one of the Lycosidae, one of the wolf spiders. And it's definitely going to be one of the rabidosa wolf spiders or rabid wolf spiders. There's actually two species in our area, and I'll kind of go over those a little bit later. But here's another good example. This is another molt. This one is of actually a jumping spider. And I know that because you can actually, on the carapace, which is that top part that got left over, you can still see the eye arrangement. And the other thing that I noticed about this when I'm looking at it is the chelicerae are still left over, like the shed parts of the chelicerae, and it looks like there's some iridescence. So that tells me this was probably a juvenile Phidippus, because they're the ones like we saw earlier with the bright green chelicerae. Okay, so really interesting part here we're going to get into is how spiders hunt and how they get food. When we think of spiders, I think mostly we think of, oh, big orb webs. So all spiders produce silk, but actually not all of them produce webs at all. So there are about 7 different types of spider silk, which again, it's made of proteins. Some are super strong, some are, elastic or more sticky. So it just depends on the type of protein and the type of silk and the type of spider that has that silk. So not only is that silk used for webs and like the orb weavers to make these orb webs, but they're also used for sleeping sacs, for egg sacs, and for even traps. There's also, if you guys might have heard of ballooning, where small spiders will actually send up a little tiny thread of silk into the air. They kind of use that to travel to different places. So a lot of very young juvenile spiderlings will kind of do that and set off and it looks like they're floating on the air, literally. What they've been finding is that they're actually not floating on the air, but it might actually be electric currents that are picking them up and moving them. So it's kind of cool. So silk use is awesome. This is a cool orb weaver that we also found at Mary Talbot. You can still see the dew in her web. I'm actually not sure which orb weaver this is. I'm gonna have to post it on iNet as well and see if some of the more, I guess, official arachnologists might be able to help me with that one. This one's Argioperantia female, because she has the big booty going on. And the cool thing about these, they do the orb webs, they'll do the zigzag pattern, which I'll actually talk about a little bit. You'll see that often. But really cool is every once in a while, if you're lucky and you look around closely to their web, you'll see these little tiny silver spiders that are near the web or sometimes even on the web. So these are dewdrop spiders or Argyrodes. They're super tiny. And that's my hand to give you scale. It's literally like my pinkies right there. Like they're very tiny. What they are is they're actually kleptoparasites. So they will live by these Argioperantia webs and they'll actually steal some prey every once in a while. And that's kind of how they survive. So in addition to our typical orb weavers or the Araenidae, we have long-jawed orb weavers or tetragnathides. Now, this is kind of cool because this is at Matthew's Prairie, and this is a web right above the gill guy when they were still full at this time. This was, I think, back in June 2021. So the tetragnatha will actually make their orb webs almost parallel to the water surface. And basically, they're going to catch stuff that's either just coming out and hatching from the water or going into water. So they're really good for like mosquitoes and midges and stuff like that. And here's some close-up of one of the long-jawed orb weavers, or the tetragnathas. They're very slender, long spiders. Often they'll try to hide behind like a piece of grass or a stick, and they blend in very well because they make themselves so skinny that it's hard to see them. So you can't always tell what kind of spider or what kind of orb weaver it is just by looking at a web. It can be hard, but sometimes there's keys. So with this one on the left, we were looking through the grasses and I saw this web and I'm like, I wonder what's making this. There's zigzags, so it reminds me of an Argioperantia or a yellow garden spider. And darn if she didn't actually come down into the web, and that's exactly what it was. So again, Argioperantia will make the stabilimentum, which is the zigzag pattern in the web. And scientists really aren't sure. They haven't really agreed what that's used for. There's still some debate whether it's for bird avoidance, camouflage, structural integrity, or stabilization of the web. It might even be any or all of those things depending on the species of spider it is. But for this, I also want to show you guys a quick video. If I can pull that up. One sec. Because I was actually able to get some good video at one of the NPAT prairies of one of these girls making that stabilimentum, which I've never seen them do it before, and it was pretty cool. You can literally see the different type of silk coming out. So let me pop that, upload. Okay. There you go. So unlike the other strands that she has on the rest of the web and the axial strands, it's a very thick web. And so the orb weavers also have these combs on the end of their feet. That's what allows them to kind of push and move that web around without getting stuck to it themselves. I thought this was really fun to watch. She was also a really big spider, which means I didn't need like a macro lens to do this. This is just with my iPhone. So she was big enough, or like that big, that you could see like all her details very easily for that video. That was pretty cool. Okay, let me jump back. So next up, this is another, spider that will weave orbs or orb webs, but these are a different family. They're called the hackled orb weavers, or Euloboridae. The really cool part about these is they're actually non-venomous. So most spiders have venom. Some people will use poisonous, but they're not really poisonous, they're venomous. That means if they bite you, it'll hurt or cause damage. Now, the vast majority of spiders are not medically significant to people. It's probably about as bad as maybe a bee sting, unless you're allergic or something weird like that. But these spiders are cool. They're non-venomous. And what they actually do is they'll actually catch their prey in these orb webs, but they'll actually regurgitate digestive enzymes on their prey and basically just slurp up the liquefied goo as like a Slurpee. And that's kind of how they eat, which is, to me, really cool. They're also really pretty when you look really close up to these. Again, they're very tiny spiders. I don't even think they're like an inch long in body length. But you can see the little tufts of hair on the ends there. Another one that you guys might commonly see are sheet web spiders. And this one looks to be a bowl and doily weaver. So they make this bowl-shaped web, and they'll typically sit right at the bottom of it and wait for insects to accidentally get stuck in it. And this is a view from the top down. They literally just hang upside down pretty much their whole lives as they're eating those things. Another one that is very common to see pretty much all across Texas are the Agolenidae, or the funnel weaver spiders. So these guys are the ones that have that big flat sheet of silk, and at the very end there's a funnel, like literally a funnel, like a little tube. And what they'll typically do is sit in that tube and wait for an unsuspecting insect to come and land on the flat part of their web, and they'll run out and grab it and then eat it, like this one did with this midge. So she had dinner that night. This is another example of those mesh web weavers, or those dictinides. There's a female who's looks to be in that sleeping sack, and it doesn't look like she really wants the male to come in. She's just kind of like not letting him in there at all. So that's kind of funny. And then this is the rattlesnake master that you'll see a lot on the prairie. So if you pay attention to those, every once in a while, you'll see some almost completely coated in these little tiny webs. And again, if you look really close, you might be able to see the spider that made those, which is again going to be a mesh web weaver. So some spiders make webs, but a lot actually don't make webs. They'll actually either use camouflage to hunt, or they'll actively predate their prey. Some of the really cool ones are the crab spiders. They're kind of lazy, I guess. They'll just kind of blend in with the flower and wait for like a pollinator or something to come up to the flower, and they'll grab it. This one's eating a tiny beetle. I'm not actually sure what kind of beetle that was, but she's munching on it. The other thing that tends to happen is cannibalism. Spiders are they're just going to eat what's kind of moving in front of them. These are two jumping spiders. The larger one that's eating the smaller one is an Eris species, and the smaller female is a Hensia species. So they will eat each other. It happens quite a lot. And then we also have some really cool ant mimic spiders in Texas. This one was actually found in Rockwall at what is now, I think, the Pettinger Nature Preserve. So this is an ant mimic spider. It is a jumping spider, actually. When I first saw this, I had never seen ant mimic jumping spiders before. I thought it was an ant moving around. They will actually wave their front two legs around to mimic antennae. So that's what it was doing. But then obviously when it jumped and I saw the thread hanging down, I was like, you're not an ant, you're a spider. So that's kind of cool. And then there's another one, and it's likely that different species of these ant mimics are probably mimicking different ant species themselves. This one, where that other one actually waved around the first two legs, this one actually waved around its second pair of legs. So it's kind of interesting. And talking about ants, this is actually one of my favorite spiders, and I actually found this out at Prairie, which I was super excited to see. This is actually a cobweb spider, but unlike the cobweb spiders you find at home in the corners or like black widows, they actually don't make cobwebs. These guys will actively hunt for ants, and they're actually very specific to what type of ants they like to eat. So this one had an ant, it was eating the ant. I thought it was really cool to see one at Prairie. Now, things eat spiders. A lot of things eat spiders. So birds will eat spiders, so it's actually good for the birds. So if you like birds, don't kill spiders because they'll kill them for you. Snakes will eat spiders. So rough green snakes are known to munch on spiders a lot. Lizards, other invertebrates will eat spiders. So other spiders will eat spiders, scorpions will eat spiders. And then you have really cool interactions with wasps. This is actually a spider wasp taking away a Platycryptus undatus, or a tan jumping spider, which is another common species you'll find in Texas. What they do is they actually sting the spider and it paralyzes it. They'll take it away to their nest, and depending on what type of wasp it is, they'll put it with their babies, with their larvae, lay a larvae near the baby or on the spider, and that baby wasp will eat the spider alive. They're not actually dead. They actually are alive and just paralyzed. So it's kind of terrifying for the spider. One of the cool things is I did have the chance to find a mud dauber nest. That's the type of wasp that'll, hunt these spiders, as mud daubers. I was actually at LBJ grasslands at night doing some mothing, and I came across a mud dauber nest that was actually being taken apart by acrobat ants. It was in their way on a tree. They didn't want it there. They were disassembling it. So it knocked off, and what I found was the entire thing was full of black widows. So this species of wasp actually specifically predates only on the Latrodactys or the black widows. So I had never seen that many black widows in one place in my entire life. I don't even know how many are there, but they're also in different stages, and there's also males and females there, which is pretty cool. And so now we're just going to go over more spiders on the prairie, just what can typically be found, and talk about it. It's just fun. I love spiders. So again, this is one of my favorites, and this is a jumping spider. This is the Phidippus audax, or the bolt jumping spider. These are super common across Texas. They have that bright green chelicery. They have that black and white coloration. But when they're young, a couple molts before they're adults, they actually have orange on their abdomen instead of black, which is kind of cool. Now, this little guy, we were actually at Matthews Prairie, and he was struggling. He actually fell in the gill guy. So I actually reached down and let him climb out to save him. I guess he could have gotten eaten by a crayfish or something, but I saved him because I like spiders. There's lots of jumping spiders in the prairie. I was at Climber Meadow, actually with Michael and Brandon Belcher, taking some photos, and I came across these two jumping spiders that were entwined with each other, just dangling. And I took a really good look, and I realized they're actually both males, and they were fighting. So even after I messed with them and played with them, they just kept going right back to fighting. They're totally like interlocked there. I don't know who's gonna win or what's gonna happen, but they were still there when we left. The other thing about jumping spiders, this is another Phidippus that was found at Climber. I call these guys gateway spiders because I think they're just really cute. Like, how can you not like those little eyes and those little tufts of hair? Brandon was talking about plants, and I was busy playing with this spider on my finger, and she actually even started like cleaning her legs on me. It was just super cute. I think she's adorable. But Phidippus are actually the largest genus of spiders we have, I think, even in the United States. And you can kind of tell those by other jumping spiders because not only the size, but they'll also often have those tufts of hair on the top of their heads. And a lot of times they're very vibrantly colored. This, I believe, might be a Phidippus clarus. This was found out at Mary Talbot. And I was actually looking at a frog in the grasses, and I looked over and she was just kind of looking at me. But again, super cute. The other one, and again, this is a picture that Anne had, This is the green lynx spider, or Pusidia viridans. So this is on Rattlesnake Master. You'll see a lot of these. They'll be on sunflowers, silphium, Rattlesnake Master. The bigger ones like to hide kind of behind the flower and then come over, and again, they eat pollinators. So here's one that's eating some sort of plant bug. And then here's one on one of those other flowers. They're really cool looking. They have like a lot of really spiky legs. I think they also will spit venom, though I've not ever actually seen one do that, but apparently a defense mechanism for some of them is to spit venom. I haven't seen them. I picked up a bunch of them. It's never happened, but I'm sure it happens. This is actually another type of lynx spider, but these are much smaller. So you'll see these closer to the ground on the prairie or on grasses or something like that. But these are striped lynx spiders, or oxyopes. They're super tiny and they're very jumpy. So a lot of people actually will confuse them for jumping spiders. The other thing, so if you're looking out of the prairie, don't just look at the tips of the grasses and stuff, but if you look at the ground, you're gonna see the ground spiders like the wolf spiders and actual ground spiders and different things. You look up higher in the prairie and the different level of plants, you're gonna see more orb weavers at different levels. The tops, you're gonna see the ambush predators that are gonna sit on flowers. So this is one of the Rabidosa wolf spiders. So it's a wolf spider, Rabidosa rabida, or the rabid wolf spider is the species of this one. Here's a clearer image of one of these, and you can kind of distinguish it by those two very dark bands on the head, or the cephalothorax, and then it has like that chevron pattern in the abdomen. So this was actually at Leela on some Texas vervain. She was right on the tip of it, so she kind of stood there for a good photo for me. We actually have another that is commonly mistaken for these in our area, and that's actually the Rabidosa punctillata, or the dotted wolf spider. So again, you see those two dark broad bands going down the back of the eyes, but if you notice that dark stripe on the abdomen doesn't have chevrons. So that's how you can kind of tell these two apart. Along with that, we have some more really cool crab spiders. These are the flower crab spiders. They're the more vibrantly colored ones. Typically they'll try to match, I think, the color of whatever plant they're on. That might even be species specific, but I'm not quite sure, so don't quote me on that. But you have other types of crab spiders too. There's bark crab spiders and ground crab spiders, and those are not nearly as vibrantly colored as the flower crab spiders, because they're going to be on bark or on the ground in the dirt. And here's another one on some Monarda. Again, the color is different. It's a different species, probably. Might be a Mechaphasa. But they rely on that camouflage, and they'll just sit really still and use those two really long legs to just grab whatever comes at them. A lot of times pollinators. I've caught myself taking pictures of bees or flies, and I'm like, why aren't they moving? And then I realized the spider's eating it. So that happens quite a bit. So there's also some really cool orb weavers. We've already seen a couple, but some other cool orb weavers that are found on prairies. This is an Acanthoptera, or a star-bellied orb weaver. This was found at Matthews. There's actually a lot of them out there. They have that nice spiky abdomen. That's a female. It's another one, just so you can see the other spikes. And there's another one at Mary Talbot in the sun. I got really excited when I saw this one at Mary Talbot. This is a Microthena sagittata, or an arrow-shaped Microthena. I love these just because they're so vibrantly colored, and they have those like sharp-looking spikes. Again, they're not medically significant to human, but I think they look really cool. Here's another cool one we found at Talbot Brothers in the woodland area, like right outside of the prairie. It's a marbled orb weaver, or Arrhenius marmorius. I've actually never seen one of these before in Texas, so I was super excited when we saw this. This is a nice big female. They have that marbling looking color, and then the legs have that, black and white color to the stripes. That was really cool. And just all across East Texas, you're going to see a lot of spiny orb weavers, which are some of my favorites. The top photo there is Microthena gracilis, or the white Microthena. The next one you have is a Varicosa ornata. Again, these are all different genuses, or genera, but they're really cool spiders, and they all have that spiky look to them. And then finally, the more common one that you might see is Gastrocantha cancroformis, or the spiny-backed orb weaver. I love those. Those are really cool if you find them. They're usually this big, but you can find some big ones every once in a while. the best part about those is they actually come in a variety of colors, and I'm trying to collect all the colors. So here I have like an orangish red one. There's some that are more deep red that you can find. There's a white one there, and then there was a bright yellow one we found. And those were actually in Rockwall as well, out near Pettinger Nature Preserve. So those are really cool. They're some of my favorites. Now, because we have to, let's talk about some medically significant spiders. So this is a very close-up image of a Loxosceles reclusa, or a brown recluse. Unfortunately, these guys received a really bad rap, but there's actually a lot of misinformation. There's many misdiagnosed bites of recluse bites that are actually staph infections. There's actually a arachnologist who is trying to kind of fight that stigma, because there are records of recluse bites causing people's skin to fall off and whatever, all the way up in states where there are no brown recluses at all. They don't exist there. So there's just a lot of misinformation about these spiders. Something interesting about them, though, is they actually have to be pressed against your skin for them to bite. So typically when people do get bit, if they get bit, it's when they're either rubbing up against something, rolling onto one, or maybe sticking your foot in a shoe. So just always, if you live in an area where these occur a lot, which they're actually all across North Texas, just watch where you're putting your feet and your hands. Again, you probably have seen me picking up a lot of spiders in these slides and these pictures. Do not pick up anything if you don't know what it is what I'm going to tell you. Anything in bite if it has a mouth. I have picked up brown recluses, but again, I've never once been bitten by a spider, and I've picked them up all the time. Don't do it. I don't recommend it, because you never know how you're going to react, if you're going to be, allergic to it or something like that. But again, there's 2 species of medically significant spiders in Texas. The rest are not considered medically significant. So this is the full body shot of that brown recluse. They do have that violin shape on the back of their head, but there's another spider actually in Texas that looks almost identical to this, but to the untrained eye, it almost looks identical, but it's actually the crevice weaver spider, and they're actually harmless. So people kill them a lot thinking that they're a brown recluse. I have some interesting articles and resources if anyone's interested. I can send links to those for more information about these, but one more close-up. I think they kind of look goofy up close, to be honest. And then, of course, the other medically significant spider that we have here in North Texas are the Latrodectus, or the widow spiders. I think you can actually find 3 or 4 species of widow spiders in Texas, maybe even 5. There's 3 species of black widow, red widows, and brown widows. I think only the black widows are typically considered medically significant. And from what I've read, males and juveniles typically don't have as strong of venom as the females. Again, don't pick them up. Watch where you put your hands. This is another one, just so you can see that hourglass coloration there. We did find some in the prairie at Madden, just literally in the grass. She had this huge messy web. That's kind of typical for widow spiders, is they have this huge messy web with just lines going everywhere, and they'll be somewhere hiding in like a clump of either leaves and grasses and stuff to hide themselves. But she was taking out some massive grasshoppers, which was pretty cool to watch. So that's kind of my my presentation here. It looks like my colors changed at the last minute, but I'll send out some contact info. But this is me holding another very large Rabidosa. You guys can tag me on iNaturalist at wildcarrot if you have any questions, or if you need help identifying any spiders, or email me. We can send my email out if you guys want that. And hopefully this coming year, I'll be able to do some walk and talks with either the Texas Master Naturalist or with NPAT events, so I can actually point some spiders out in person.